Hi, it's Steve from Custom Table Tennis, and as promised, we're going to have a look at pimpled out rubber. We get so many requests and we go through it so often about the various types of pimple out rubber. We won't get into the debate as whether they should be banned or not, because that's just silly. We'll start with probably there were pimple bats just before these, but this is the one that everybody knows. This is where it all started. Victor Barner, 41 world titles, 22 gold medals. There was no ITTF approved. It was actually Dunlop, made in England. It was made in Hungary. It was made in various places throughout the world. 3-ply and just your brown canvas backed pimple rubber. And you can actually see footage of YouTube that has been carefully restored of him using this. That's lost some grip. Oops, I've just pulled a pimple off. There you go. It goes very, very brittle, and that, bearing in mind that could be 30s, 40s, up to 50s. So you're getting on for nearly, it could be 100 years old. I don't know. There'll be experts who'll know because of where the logo is, what era and what have you, but I'm not an expert on the Barners. Here's one here that we've lovingly restored. We've got the old pimples off. This is actually legal to play with. We've got this on our website. Very difficult to get hold of. You can get replicas, but this is the real thing. 3-ply, made in England. And then the rubber, in fact, just before we get to the rubber, something that's very interesting is an original Dunlop Barner case. This is not for sale. I mean, we've seen people try and get £50 for these on eBay. They're just opportunists. It's a really nice Barner case, but look at that. Made in England. As far as I'm aware, we don't make a single blade or a single rubber or anything to do with table tennis in England anymore. If I'm wrong, leave him a remark in the comments below, but I don't think we make anything anymore. So that's just quite nice. It's a nice bit of nostalgia, and that, with the reason we put this rubber on, is it's inexpensive. It's called Friendship 729 Dr. Evil. As you can see, because the Barner blade is the original one is so big, the rubber doesn't even fit, so we can't start it down here because it'd be short up the top. So if we have a look at the rubber then, this is what's called ox or orthodox, or it's just simply, it means it's got no sponge on the back, so it's just straightforward rubber. And if you didn't know, if you play with pimples and people are having a moan at you, well, tell them that you do play with pimples, but the pimples are on the inside, because a reverse rubber is just basically that. So your pimples are on your inside, and that's why it's called a reverse rubber. So loads of this stuff for hard bat tournaments. We actually sell it on a it's easy to put on. We can use normal glue with it. It's fairly thick. It's not canvas backed, and the beauty of it is, if I flip the back around, use with no sponge, ox use only. You shouldn't be putting sponge on this, and it's hard bat approved for all your international tournaments worldwide. It's one of the few that is approved. So just before we get into short pimples, I'm going to just go through a few different brands and why you would use them, why you would not use them. The first thing is the difference between short, medium and long. If you're a pimple expert, you don't need to know this stuff, but some people just don't know. So your short pimple, looking at this 802, which is probably the Chinese bestseller because it's inexpensive. The quality's not too bad, but the short pimple is 0.5 millimeters long or high or tall. So when you look at it from the side, that's round about, give or take, 0.5 mil. There are exceptions. I know people are going to say, well, there's such and such a rubber. And then your medium pimple is 1 millimeter long. And we're gonna go through them all. I'm not going to spend half an hour on this, but people have been asking. And then your long is 1.6 millimeter long. So this is probably the world's best-selling pimple, simply because it's Chinese made and it's probably been around 35 to 40 years. I play with Pimples on both sides. I don't care what people say. I've always played with Pimples on both sides, and why should I change to suit other players? And I say that to anybody who goes on about Pimples. But not a great fan. Okay for flat hitting, but you can't actually, there's no real grip there. I've not got a ball. Yes, I have got a ball. So it's okay. It just slides around a little bit. It's not as going to be as responsive to incoming spin, but then you're not going to be able to generate much with that. And out of the versions of the 802, there's 802 40, 802 stroke 1, all different variations to do with the pimple spacing. But what I'd say about this is your basic stuff. I'm not going to say what the prices are, because this could be on YouTube for years. But you get your Friendship 729 Orange Classic Hard Sponge. But what we'd say is spend a little bit extra, and if you've got to buy the cheapest Pimple, don't buy that one. Just buy the Mystery 3 version. It's a little bit grippier. Quality's probably a little bit higher, and it's on your classic 729 with a hardness 30. Now, the Chinese hardnesses don't compare them with the ASN elastomer hardnesses, the European. It's just nothing like. I mean, to me, and I've had a hit with this, it's still not very forgiving. So I would probably, well, I have done, there's no two ways about it. I have bypassed the 802s, and I've played on and off with the Oran rubber since it came out in 2009. It's my go-to rubber. Yes, it's still made in Chinese. This is the original version, and it's on a soft 35-degree sponge, and it is so forgiving, so easy to adapt to, so easy to use, and it's got grip. So if the ball is dropped short on your forehand, you can flick, you can spin the ball, you can do a fake loop, you can use the Pimple. And although it is made in China, there's no question about it, it's a little small independent company that we like, and the quality is extremely high, and they're all the same every single time. So that's just basic Oran, easy to control. And then what they did, they brought out Oran 2, which I also tried, but the reason why I didn't actually come off Oran 2 is because of the weight. It's on a fairly weighty sponge and quite dense, quite hard, quite fast. I could play with it, but I chose not to, because you're just putting a little bit of extra weight to your bat, and it's probably about 10 grams, and they only do it in 1 or 2 thicknesses, and I don't think they're doing it in the 1.5. I might be wrong. And then finally, while we're talking about short Pimples, this is the Pimple I use at the moment. It took me about an hour to get used to it, because I'm used to the top sheet, and it's with this new purple sponge that has got some kind of tensor effect going on in there. And I use it, one of my teammates use it. In fact, Linda at the weekend has just won the over 50s doubles playing with this on both sides. She blocks and hits. She's not interested in spinning the ball. Let the people spin at her, and she blocks and hits with this. And this is the Oran, and this is probably my recommendation. I've used the Maristos, I've used all these Pimples, I've used the Victors, I've tried all these, but I end up coming back to this stuff because probably I'm used to it and I can control it. I know what I'm doing and it's a quality thing. I can put a new sheet on and go straight to the match. So our recommendation on a short pimple rubber, probably in the UK about another tenner than the Chinese stuff, but hey ho, for another tenner you're getting a quality product. So as I said, these 0.5 millimeter tall, give or take. There's going to be some that are 0.4 and 0.6, we know that, but this is just a general look at the difference between the Pimples. So moving along then to the excuse me, the medium pimple, which what I said about these is they're usually 1 mil. If I turn it to the side, you can see that the Pimples are a little bit taller. Losing my voice this morning. A little bit taller, and the Pimples are usually, but not always, spaced out a little bit more. And what you get is some of the effect of a long pimple rubber, which we haven't got to yet. It's a different thing. So this one sits in between. You've got short, medium and long. We've done the short. This is the medium. You've got your 563, which is your standard version, which has probably been around 35-40 years. It's an inexpensive way to try it. It comes on your classic, not very forgiving orange sponge. Or if you're going to try this, we would go for, again, we'd go for the Mystery 3 version on the nice controllable yellow soft sponge. Incidentally, this is the same sponge that we use on our coach rubber because it's soft and it's forgiving, and it's great for coaching, but obviously not with the Pimples out. And then finally, and I know there's lots of players, I'm not going to drop all the names that all the people are using on this one. Another spin load, Kyler, the easier one to control out of Kyler and Oran, but the effect is not as great. And when you're talking about effect, the ball skids through a little bit lower. So the ball's going to stay lower. It's going to reverse spin to some extent. Or we've got a phone call, so we'll be back shortly. I'm back. So we was having a look at the Kyler. It's on about 35 degrees sponge, easy to control with reasonable effect if you're blocking in and hitting. I don't know many people who can control it on the forehand side. So it's predominantly a backhand rubber. And then we've got Oran, which is probably the most effective. It's about the time when they started putting made in China. It's definitely made in China. This is on the silver sponge. We're not a fan of the Oran 2. This is soft and forgiving. You're getting, those Pimples are quite soft. There's a lot of grip there. There's one player in particular who springs to mind who won the over 70s in Blackpool playing with this, and that probably wasn't that very popular playing with this sort of rubber. But if you're able to play with it, you want to play with it, you want to experiment with it, you're not quite as mobile as you used to, why not? So that's the Oran. I put these blades here just quickly to flit over the blades. There's absolutely no point in putting a pimple rubber, unless you're an experienced pimple player, there's no point on putting on something like one of our fast Wengi blades. Listen to this. Now what is going to happen if you put an ox pimple on there? You're going to chop block or block and it's going to go off the end of the table, unless you're a skillful player. So you won't want to put it on a T-Mobile, one of ours, or anything fast with carbon layers in. What you want, you don't have to spend a lot of money. We know you can spend hundreds of pounds on an endorsed defensive blade, but this is a spin load defender. It's oversized. Feel how soft that is. So you're going to get a bit of dwell and you're going to be actually able to do something with the Pimples. This comes in all the handle shapes. So moving along then to the most controversial part, and I've heard it all before in the last 40 years. Oh, Pimples want banning and this, that and the other. But if you look at it from another point of view, when they banned the frictionless Pimple, and I can't remember the year, 2007, all it did really was stop a lot of disabled players, wheelchair players, playable players in the 70s and 80s, stop the enjoyment. There's nobody using it at international level. These things, you've got some top defenders, but they're not using this sort of thing because they're sponsored. The top players in the world, in the top 50 or whatever, they're not going to be using something like this because they've been picked up and they're getting endorsed to use something by a big German brand and then charge you £45 for it. This, I can use this all day long. If I'm testing a blade, I put this on. It's very similar to what I use. It's easy to apply. It's your basic Chinese stuff, and it's quite effective. I prefer it over the 755. It does a little bit more. There's more space in between the Pimples. So that's the 755. No, it's not. It's the Lion Claw. Then we've got the 755 basic. Been around forever. You can pick this stuff up for, I don't know what it is online these days, 14, 15 pounds or something like that, and you're not wasting a load of money. Again, Pimples are soft and flexible. Comes on your standard orange sponge. Gonna grip the ball. If somebody spins at you and you're getting the ball back, you're gonna get some kind of reaction. It's on this classic 729 sponge, but again, just get the mystery version. Look at the quality of the print on the mystery version. A little bit more care has been taken over this version, and it's a little bit grippier on the top. And then you've got your classic 38-degree yellow sponge that we use on our coaching rubber. So moving along then, and this is where I come in, I've used Stackle Fow. In fact, I've used all these rubbers. So we've got Stackle Fow, I've got Zeitgeist, I've got Dawn and Glance, and I can't play with Grass D-Tech. I'm not taking that out of the packet. It's a really expensive German-made rubber. Very, very effective if you can use it. I know lots of players far better than me. A lot of the coaches in the surrounding area use this rubber, but they've got far better touch and feel, and some of them use special blades. But this is my rubber of choice at the moment. One of the reasons I like this rubber, out of 10, it's 2.5 speed. It's the slowest rubber I can get my hands on, and for ease of putting it on, I believe that when you buy these, they should all be attached to a glue sheet. You can take the glue sheet off the actual rubber or leave it on. You should have the choice, but it should be on. But no manufacturer's doing it. So we either put it on with a glue sheet if requested, or we put it on with standard glue. But what I like is it's got this top sheet here, which is slightly tacky, which keeps it fairly rigid, so it's a lot easier to put on. Basically get the glue on there, get the glue on the blade, dry it off, and then we can manipulate this onto the blade. We can get it all pushed down nicely. It's not deforming and falling back on itself. So one of the reasons why we like the Spin Lord is because it's the attention to detail. He's thought about it. It'll cost more to get produced with that on. And so the Stackle Fow, if I'm not using Lion Claw, that's my go-to rubber. And then obviously they do it in the other colours, and then they've just introduced a nice 0.5 millimeter sponge. Little bit about the sponges. If you want the greatest effect, you want Ox. If you're going to be hitting, rolling, blocking, punching, do all those other things, and you want a more versatile game, but you'll lose a little bit of the effect, get a little bit of sponge under it. Most international players have got some kind of sponge behind it these days because they have to come in and attack. But so the Stackle Fow, I'm pleased to say, it's available in the different colours, and that's my go-to rubber. I've used the Zeitgeist in the past. The Zeitgeist, Not quite as effective for me. A good rubber, but not quite as effective for me. Very, very thin base sheet. The pimples wobble about. You can see they're spaced out. And easy to apply because it's on here. Not quite as spin sensitive. You can see when you put them two together that the rubber, it's a different compound, different rubber altogether. The Stackle Fow, the Pimples are closer together. And then finally, move the Zeitgeist out of the way, and finally we'll finish off with the Dawn and Glands, which is probably second in effect to the Grass D-Tech at half the cost. Again, it comes with this nice sheet here so you can put it on. I mean, when this grass comes out the packet, it's wobbling around all over the place. You've got to be so careful. You're trying to do this sort of thing with it, and if it touches up here, you've got to get the glue off and start again. So we really appreciate the small excuse me, the small brand Spinlord, small company, been around since 2009. They're not going to drop off the list. You're not going to get used to this, and it's going to come off the list. There's a myriad of different ones, but these are our top picks. So it's a little bit of a look at Pimples, but remember, if somebody's getting at you for Pimples, just, what can I say? I don't get it much these days. Oh, Pimples should be banned. Really? You're just stopping hundreds of people in wheelchairs playing and various. I mean, I'm waiting. I don't want to tell you my life story, but I need a new hip, and I'm in Division 1. So I ain't going to be running around anytime soon whether I've got pimples or not, but that's my problem. But there's people with all sorts of disabilities that are able to play. And a quick story, just before I go, did a trade stand a few years ago, and there's a guy, it was like a U3A over 50s, and there's people of various ages. There was a guy down the other end of the table doing a side spin serve to a lady who was in her 80s, and she couldn't get the ball back, and he continued to do it. And I thought, what is the point of that? And he thought it was funny. So we had a bat with 1.5mm rubbers on an all-round blade. I gave her the bat. I said, try that, because it's not going to, your short pimple is going to negate 30% of his spin. And lo and behold, 1.5 rubber pimple out on a nice control blade. She started getting the ball. I said, just aim for the middle of the table. He thinks it's funny. And after 20 minutes, he didn't want to play with her anymore. So hey ho, you can use Pimple if you're not bothered about the spin. Some players just don't spin. Why should all the rubbers get faster and faster and faster, and then we have it in for Pimples of all descriptions? So enough said. Steve from Custom Table Tennis. If you want more videos, and we're going to have a look at anti-spin, we're going to have a look at our best-selling 4 reverse rubbers, click and subscribe, and also buy from us. We're a small UK based company. We're not millionaires. We just do this. If you can turn a passion, a hobby, into a business, happy days. But we'll keep putting these videos on as long as you want them, and if you've got any suggestions that we can do, we'll have a look at it. Bye for now.